From mysterious numbers encoded by the most famous artists of all time to an effective middle finger in a religious masterpiece, today we look at 10 secret messages hidden in famous paintings. Number 10. Hidden Hymn. One of the world's most analyzed paintings still holds secrets we are just now discovering. Painted between 1494 and 1498, Leonardo da Vinci's depiction of Jesus Christ's Last Supper has even been the premise for Hollywood's The Da Vinci Code, the fictional plot of which revolves around the mysterious codes purportedly hidden in this very famous work. In real life, Giovanni Maria Palla, a 45-year-old musician and computer technician from Lecce, Italy, has uncovered a musical composition based on the placement of the loaves of bread and the position of Jesus and the apostles' hands in the picture. By superimposing the 5 lines of the musical staff over the painting, Giovanni was able to see a harmonic musical structure. Other elements of the image gave him clues to the rhythm of the piece. Giovanni describes the music as sounding like a requiem, a solemn composition for the dead. A telling bit of evidence that Da Vinci intended this as a secret code is that the music must be read from right to left, in just the same unique way that Leonardo wrote in mirror image for his secret diaries. Number 9. Secret Brain. In his teens, Michelangelo wanted so much to depict the human figure accurately that he began exhuming corpses from the church graveyard. He would dissect them to draw their parts from life, so to speak. He later destroyed all his records and sketches, but he left his anatomical knowledge for us to decode in his greatest accomplishment, the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo encoded an anatomically correct representation of the human brain into the central fresco panel of his God-creating Adam Sistine Chapel painting, behind and surrounding the image of God reaching out to touch Adam's finger. The outline of the brain is here, and the brain's components such as the cerebellum, pituitary gland, and optic chiasm are all depicted using the folds and wrinkles in God's cloak. It's all there, just as young Michelangelo would have seen for himself in his churchyard cadavers. What message is Michelangelo's code sending? Is God granting Adam intelligence in addition to life? Is Adam creating God through his brain? We can't ask Michelangelo, so unfortunately we'll never know. Number 8. Madonna, Child, and UFO. An intriguing painting entitled The Madonna with St. Giovanni is thought to have been painted by Domenico Ghirlandaio, a contemporary of Botticelli. Born in Florence, he lived from 1448 to 1494 during the Italian Renaissance. Michelangelo himself was once an apprentice in Ghirlandaio's shop. The Madonna with St. Giovanni is a rather typical Madonna image, with Our Lady kneeling, hands together in supplication to an infant on the ground, the infant protected from the floor by the Madonna's red gown. Into this ordinary, worshipful scene is injected what appears to be a flying object in the sky. It has mass, shape, and substance. There are structural details on the object's surface. In modern times, like now, the first thing we must ask ourselves is it a spaceship? The mystery object is artistically positioned to be noticed. It is centered in the top right quarter of the painting, just behind the Madonna, perfectly framed. The viewer's eye is instinctively drawn to it, as though it was the most important object in the picture. If so, what is the meaning of this code? Some suggest space aliens. Others are more likely to think it is an awkward portrayal of a star or other heavenly body. Number 7. Allegory of Spring. In 1482, during the Italian Renaissance, Sandro Botticelli created what has been called one of the most controversial paintings in history, his Allegory of Spring, known as Primavera. Commissioned by a wealthy and powerful Medici family, the painting is now in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Italy. The immense work resembles a kind of Flemish tapestry, popular during the period. Presented in the piece are 9 near life-sized mythological gods and goddesses gathered in a fruit grove. Zephyrus grabs a fleeing and fecund Chloris, the goddess of spring, looking back in fright. Cupid points his bow and arrow at a trio of dancing graces, dressed in sheer white veils. Young Mercury stands guard with his sword. Flora, with a flowered dress, walks through the idyllic crowd with a wistful look. Venus, the tall central figure in blue, gazes introspectively as the action circles around her. Philosophically, the Medici were Neoplatonists. Their belief was that Venus ruled over divine love. They viewed her as a classical equivalent to the Virgin Mary, regarding what we call holy or Platonic love, as opposed to carnal love. This is coded in the painting in the framing of Venus in the center, as in an altar. Meanwhile, in the background of the image, the attention to horticultural detail is astounding. The scene accurately portrays over 500 scientifically identified species of plants, including 190 different species of flowers, 130 species which have been identified by name. The time spent encoding these plants so carefully into this work clearly shows intent to pass along an important message to someone. Who? Number 6. Supper in the Cafe. Vincent van Gogh's Café Terrace at Night, painted in 1888, reveals on the surface a simple outdoor French restaurant with seated guests and a central server. It is a starry night, and the plaza has little traffic. The bright yellow and orange cafe is mostly empty, save for the 12 patrons. 12? Upon closer examination, the server appears to have long hair. Off to the left, halfway out the door, is a dark figure escaping the scene. Jared Baxter, researcher and lecturer, reads these codes as being an intentional tribute to Da Vinci's Last Supper, with Jesus wearing a white tunic serving the 12 apostles, and with Judas leaving the scene to betray Jesus to the Romans. Further analysis of the image shows the existence of multiple crosses, including one prominent cross figure in the large window just behind the server. The painting's artistic style is known as sacred realism. 2 weeks after painting the cafe, Van Gogh wrote to his brother Theo about his terrible need for, dare I say the word, religion. He worked to encode religious symbolism into his art throughout his entire career. Number 5. Given a fig. To give someone a fig is an obscene gesture equivalent to the middle finger in America. It shows a severe lack of respect. Michelangelo coded the fig itself into the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Pope Julius II engaged Michelangelo to design and construct his Pope-worthy tomb in 1505. It was a monumental task that would end up taking 40 years. Michelangelo began the job, spent a year importing marble, produced over 40 statues, then Pope Julius stopped paying him. Michelangelo was quite angry, felt very disrespected, but he continued. Even as he remained working on the Pope's tomb without pay, it was Julius II who commissioned Michelangelo to paint the ceiling frescoes at the Sistine Chapel. They argued, they fought, they disagreed, but in the end, Michelangelo consented to design and paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. But there remained unsettling matters between the two men. Michelangelo had some thoughts about how to handle the situation. A tantalizing idea involved the image of the prophet Zechariah, accompanied by 2 angels over his left shoulder. As the prophet Zechariah reads a book rendered by Michelangelo as a lifelike portrait of Pope Julius II, one of the 2 angels behind him puts his right arm around the other angel's shoulder, droops his right index finger down, and sticks his thumb in between his index finger and his middle finger. This hand gesture is what is known as giving the fig. It was as clear to others back then as giving the finger is now, but Michelangelo's artistic genius makes the gesture as subtle as a gentle breeze. If Pope Julius ever noticed, he didn't mention it publicly or in his writing. As far as we know, Michelangelo got paid for the Sistine Chapel. Number 4. El Autobus. In 1925, Frida Kahlo was impaled on a metal handrail when a bus in which she was riding crashed head-on into a trolley car. A blue-collar worker pulled the metal rail from her body. Her artwork often suggested that merely surviving that horrible accident was a miracle. She suffered ever afterward. Kahlo's El Autobus portrays 5 adults and 1 child on a bus. They are seated on a bench side by side, facing the viewer, except the child. A boy kneeling and facing backward out the window. There is nothing remarkable about the scene, but it is captivating. The mood is striking. It is not ominous. It is peaceful, ordinary, normal. In moments from this peaceful scene, some of them will be torn apart forever. Is that her secret message? Number 3. Crossroads of Control. Mexican artist and muralist Diego Rivera held a successful retrospective in 1931, which led to several works, including one in New York City. In 1933, the Rockefeller Center commissioned Man at the Crossroads, and it was immediately controversial. Rivera had created a work that featured communist Vladimir Lenin in a central role. Wealthy American capitalist and Rivera's patron, Nelson Rockefeller Jr., demanded of Rivera that Lenin be removed from the unfinished mural on Rockefeller Center's walls. Rivera refused. Rockefeller paid Rivera in full for his work on the incomplete project and dismissed him, then destroyed the mural. But Rivera wasn't finished. Less than 10 months after Rockefeller's destruction of Man at the Crossroads, Rivera unveiled an enormous 15.75-foot by 37.5-foot mural entitled Man, Controller of the Universe, at the opening of the Museo del Palacio de Bellas Artes in Mexico City. The mural, completed in 1934, still survives today. Again, Rivera's new mural compares and contrasts the politics of communism and capitalism through the use of images, iconography, and symbolism. In this mural, the worker is central to the composition and the message. Resurrected are Lenin, Trotsky, and Marx. Where it gets personal is in his portrayal of the capitalistic wealthy, represented by Nelson Rockefeller Jr. himself. Rockefeller, a married man who didn't drink, is seen in a bar with alcohol, associating with women, and pictured with a dish of syphilis bacteria floating above his head. Diego Rivera's codes are easy to decipher. Number 2. Proverbs. In 1559, on a panel only 3.8 feet by 5.3 feet, Pieter Bruegel the Elder set out to encode the folly of the world. Using oils, Bruegel painted at least 112 recognizable, literal illustrations of Dutch idioms and proverbs. Flemish proverb illustration collections were popular for over a century before Bruegel created his largest work on the subject. Most well known as Netherlandish proverbs, we still use many of these proverbs and idioms today translated into English. Picture swimming against the tide. Bruegel painted exactly that. Or banging one's head against the wall. He illustrated that too. Armed to the teeth, the die is cast. Some well-known phrases such as from the Bible are not translated exactly, such as casting roses before swine. Other phrases are simply lost in translation, like the herring doesn't fry here, meaning it's not going according to plan. It is nearly impossible for a modern English speaker to derive this meaning from the literal depiction on the painting today, but the code is still there to be broken. Other codes depicted require knowledge of the contemporary customs and traditions. One alternate title for the Netherlandish proverbs is The Blue Cloak, a story about a man who places a blue cloak upon his wife on horseback, indicating to the village that she is cuckolding him. Another idiom of the time is to marry under the broomstick, which means to live together without the sanctity of marriage. To trick someone is to shave the fool without lather, and to be in terrible distress is to run like one's backside is on fire. So don't gaze at the stork and waste your time. Try to kill 2 flies with 1 stroke, and be efficient so that you don't fall from the ox onto the rear end of a donkey. That means hard times. Number 1. Paint by numbers. The artistic king of codes, Leonardo da Vinci, seems to have hidden secrets almost everywhere in almost all of his pictures. In this case, a microscope is required to read the codes hidden in one of the most famous and enigmatic paintings in the world. Art historians say they have found tiny letters and numerals inside the very eyes of the Mona Lisa. Her right eye must be magnified many times over to see the letters LV. Zoom in on her left eye to see various symbols not clearly defined, possibly B or CE. Appearing on a bridge arc behind Mona Lisa seems to be the number 72, although some say it could be L2. The 500-year age of the painting doesn't make it any easier to see the various markings, but Silvano Vincetti, president of Italy's National Committee for Cultural Heritage, is confident they are not a mistake and were put there by the artist. But for what purpose and for whom? Been the premise for Hollywood's The Da Vinci Code, the fictional plot of which revolves around the mysterious codes purportedly hidden in this very famous work. In real life, Giovanni Maria Palla, a 45-year-old musician and computer technician from Lecce, Italy, has uncovered a musical composition based on the placement of the loaves of bread and the position of Jesus and the apostles' hands in the picture. By superimposing the 5 lines of the musical staff over the painting, Giovanni was able to see a harmonic musical structure. Other elements of the image gave him clues to the rhythm of the piece. Giovanni describes the music as sounding like a requiem, a solemn composition for the dead. A telling bit of evidence that Da Vinci intended this as a secret code is that the music must be read from right to left, in just the same unique way that Leonardo wrote in mirror image for his secret diaries. Number 9. Secret Brain. In his teens, Michelangelo wanted so much to depict the human figure accurately that he began exhuming corpses from the church graveyard. He would dissect them to draw their parts from life, so to speak. He later destroyed all his records and sketches, but he left his anatomical knowledge for us to decode in his greatest accomplishment, the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo encoded an anatomically correct representation of the human brain into the central fresco panel of his God-creating Adam Sistine Chapel painting, behind and surrounding the image of God reaching out to touch Adam's finger. The outline of the brain is here, and the brain's components such as the cerebellum, pituitary gland, and optic chiasm are all depicted using the folds and wrinkles in God's cloak. It's all there, from mysterious numbers encoded by the most famous artists of all time to an effective middle finger in a religious masterpiece. Today, we look at 10 secret messages hidden in famous paintings. Number 10. Hidden Hymn. One of the world's most analyzed paintings still holds secrets we are just now discovering. Painted between 1494 and 1498, Leonardo da Vinci's depiction of Jesus Christ's Last Supper has even been just as young Michelangelo would have seen for himself in his churchyard cadavers. What message is Michelangelo's code sending? Is God granting Adam intelligence in addition to life? Is Adam creating God through his brain? We can't ask Michelangelo, so unfortunately we'll never know. Number 8. Madonna, Child, and UFO. An intriguing painting entitled The Madonna with St. Giovanni is thought to have been painted by Domenico Ghirlandaio, a contemporary of Botticelli. Born in Florence, he lived from 1448 to 1494